right? A major distinction. But the best part of it, right? The best part of it is that Gary Gensler tried to make an argument that the reconciliation of the database in Bitcoin was the actual shitty part, and that there's no difference between an Oracle centralized database and Bitcoin. He went with that, okay? So he tried to sit there and say, there's no real advantage with the database management system, right? So Gensler downplaying people who make investment based on how the books and records are kept. It's mind-blowing. The Bitcoin network is the most important accounting ledger technology in history and the first innovation in the last 700 years. This interview makes no sense. So he literally came out and argued that the discovery of the Bitcoin-based proof of work public ledger was like Oracle. It's just fine, right? Now here's where things get really fun, because again, him not understanding he understands, right? But him going with that point of view, him going with that idea and arguing that the database innovation in Bitcoin, the decentralized nature of proof of work in action and miners reconciling a database that's global around the world, why we acknowledge every day that it's running, is a not just a feat of math and cryptography. It's a feat of artificial intelligence. We've grown an organism without any corporate body in charge of it. It just grows. This is a form of life. And he's sitting there and saying, So it's perfect. And then he goes on to say, when he starts arguing with Joe Kernan, and now Joe Kernan modeling exactly what most Wall Street people have experienced over the past few years, right? I used to go on that show, and Joe Kernan hated Bitcoin in 2017. Now he's like, well, what if you want to de-risk from the government, right? Him there describing the Wall Street point of view is, why the hell should we get caught up in all of your politics and all of your printing and all of your debasement and all of your political money? Why should we get caught up in that? Why can't we de-risk? Right. So he asked the question straight up. And of course, Gensler couldn't come up with an answer. That's when he reverted to the, my brain is broken and it's actually an Oracle database. So he's done. Right. And just look at who these are, the people we're up against, guys. It's Janet Yellen telling you that Joe Biden is super alert and aware. OK, it's Gary Gensler telling you Bitcoin is an Oracle database, like Oracle, the technology, not an Oracle, but like the same as any centralized database. They're not sending us their best. And this stuff won't make anyone afraid. Joe, a Wall Street guy, told him, pound cement, dude. Like, your shit sucks. No one is paying attention to you. This is dumb. You're not making any good points. Zero effectiveness, zero persuasion. The amount of fear Gary Gensler was able to induce yesterday was the same amount that my 5-year-old daughter is able to produce when she threatens me with something that I didn't give her. That's it. Like, when I laugh at my children because they didn't get what they want and they threaten me or get angry or anything, that was the reaction that I had, right? Just like the reaction to the space lasers. Right? Where did Dr. Evil come from? Why is he in the show? Right? Why is Austin Powers' storylines now coming into our destruction of fiat? Well, it's only natural. It's only natural that the death of fiat, which requires the fear-based fuel, right? Fiat, fear, fuel, in order to get the thing going. If they can't have the fear, there's no fuel, and then there's no fiat. That's what we're left with. And Americans are understanding where the threat comes from. That's why I don't care about Taylor Swift and all this shit. Politics in this era of change have been boiled down to just personal security decisions. It's true that fear is one of the main catalysts for decision making. It's 100% true. We don't make decisions rationally. We do make them from fear. They're right to hit the fear button, but when they can't induce the fear, they're powerless. When you start perceiving what threats really are, when you start realizing, exactly as Marjorie Taylor Greene said, the threat is the US government, then things become much clearer. And that's really how fiat is going to die, right? That's why I've been predicting it dies quickly, because we gave too much power to these people over years to win World War II. We built a war machine based on this money in order to get us to where we are. And it worked for a little while, but it doesn't work anymore. And interestingly, that's why I still remain so grateful that RFK has put his hat in his name, into the ring here, because his family is largely responsible for a lot of this stuff. They're involved in a lot of this. Now, I'll go back to him dying, the uncle dying, right? Now, we can call him a hero all we want, and he probably was, right? I'm a big fan of JFK, big fan. But there were problems with his presidency, right? And the problems begin with this fear-based thing with the military. Now, remember, when he ran against Richard Nixon in 1960, Nixon was Eisenhower's vice president. Eisenhower did not believe in an arms race. He did not believe there was something called a missile gap, right? That's what the theory was, that Russia was building too many missiles and America wasn't keeping up. So that's where the military-industrial speech comes from, because the 60 campaign was run on Kennedy saying that there's a missile gap, Russia is going to outperform us in military spending, and we're going to get killed, right? So what happens with Kennedy is he goes on and on about this and stokes a bunch of fear about Russia-based missiles. Nixon says it's not true, right? We have nothing to fear. We're America. We could whip their ass in 10 split seconds. Nixon understood that California alone, he was a Californian. He knew California itself could destroy Russia. He didn't even need America. He could go with just California, and they would have enough armaments, power, money. The economy of California was bigger than that of Russia, right, Soviet Union. So it wouldn't have been hard. He understood that because he worked for Eisenhower. He understood from Eisenhower that the military being in charge of things is going to be bad for America. Now, the military couldn't control America when Eisenhower was there because Eisenhower controlled the military. He was the supreme commander, right? That was his title, the supreme commander. So the supreme commander of the military was not going to let them bully him. He knew exactly what was wrong with him. So when Kennedy won, Eisenhower complained, was it all for nothing? Like, did everything I do just go away? He spent his presidency fighting against military power growing. And Nixon joined that. Nixon understood exactly how it worked because he learned from Eisenhower. And then you get, and which is why I love the Vivek Trump connection, right? It's almost a replay. It's a do-over of the Eisenhower-Nixon 1950 presidency. Because what happens with Kennedy is he uses the military spenders. They're a big part of his campaign. That's how they come into the Democrat Party. They're not getting any play with the Republicans. They come in that way. But then he says, and then he also, the mob helped him, right? We know election stealing begins in his presidency. So he invites all these people in to help him. Now, I'm not saying Kennedy wants what these people want. He wanted power like everyone else, so you can understand it. Doesn't change that he was a good guy or a bad guy or what's going on with him. I still love John F. Kennedy, so I don't have a problem with the choices he made. He didn't understand the ramifications. He invited the fox into the henhouse, all right? He did. He invited the fox into the henhouse. He invited many foxes into the henhouse in order to help him win. He realized what he had done at a certain point and started pushing them away, but it was too late. They killed him. From then on, we do not have civilian control of the United States and the military. From then on, it's something else. So seeing RFK come back here, that's how I made these predictions, that he would get involved in this election, simply because we got to go tie up that story. That narrative of 1960 has a role in understanding what's happening now in 2024. And not many people understand that other than him. Because again, where the FISA stuff comes from and where the banking stuff comes from is after they kill his uncle. After that, they start running the psyops with Gulf of Tonkin within weeks, right? They begin the Vietnam War within weeks because he wasn't going to do it. He let the fox in and didn't have the ability to kick them out. Now, I think RFK understands that. I think RFK doesn't think his uncle was perfect, right? He was great. I don't have to change my opinions about what he did that was great, but he let the fox into the henhouse and they haven't left since. And it's a major problem. And that he's here is almost his punishment, right? His family has to help clean this fucking mess up, right? They do, despite all the crazy shit they've gone through. So, and I believe he can. I believe he's the right person to do a big part of this. And when he talks about Hawaii, and I love that the environmental lawyer piece of it is a big part of it, because indeed that's a good trajectory for him to enter the conversation on. So now that we have this understanding of where the threat comes from, and he would know it better. I mean, he knows who killed his dad. He knows who killed his uncle. I don't think he needs any more lessons on how evil these people really are, right? I think he gets it. So that's why we're coming to this thing where we understand that the ability to lie, cheat, and steal, to manipulate the system through fear has been exhausted. You can still manipulate a system through fear. It's just, what should we be afraid of? And we're deciding to be afraid of the appropriate risk, which is the same risk that killed Kennedy's uncle, his dad, and that continues to call him a conspiracy theorist. Remember what I said? That they wouldn't be able to call him a conspiracy theorist? Was I right? They try. It never works, right? He can just brush it off. He's the one person that can brush it off, right? So that's why Guy Swan says the following. The really funny thing here is that literally all of our money today is just an accounting ledger. The difference between fiat and Bitcoin in that regard is that Bitcoin is a ledger that verifiably can't be cheated, while fiat banking ledgers have no assurances of any kind. In that context, if you were choosing between a clearly insolvent bank and a bank that provably could be insolvent, would that affect your investment decision? Well, again, everyone is starting to realize where threats come from, what threatens them, what's a risk, and the actual fear, the perception of fear, is now being properly prescribed to all of the brain breakers and people who are out there. So what do we got in the comments, right?